Welcome back to the Art and Yoga and Wellness podcast. So, on today's video, I am talking with one of my dear friends who is an expert in clean beauty and wellness products. And she's also an attorney. So, we have a great conversation about what products in your home could be sabotaging your health, affecting your endocrine system. What are some easy swaps you can make? A great place to start. We also talk about some of the laws that are kind of ridiculous. And then also some laws that have just been passed that are really looking up in this topic. And so if you are curious at all about how to start making some healthy shifts in your environment at home, or just want a little bit of a conversation around your environment and how it directly affects your health and wellness, today's video is for you. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Art and Yoga and Wellness podcast. I'm your host, Kira Whitaker. So today, guys, we have got a great episode planned. If you haven't listened to the previous, I think last two episodes, I've talked a lot about your environment. That's kind of the theme for this month, especially because in the membership, we released a new course that talks about your environment, how your environment directly affects your overall health and well-being. And so I've been waiting to have a really good moment, a really good season to have our guest today on. Not only is she one of my best friends, she's maybe one of the smartest, kindest, and most inviting people I know. And so welcome Ashton Montgomery to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. I love an opportunity to have a conversation with you, but especially about something I'm passionate about. So thanks for having me.
I know. I'm so excited too. So before we jump in, I want to give you guys just a little bit of a background on Ashton outside of her just being one of my closest friends. I know that that's not enough info. So I'm going to give you a little bit of her background, and then I'm going to tell you guys what to expect in today's episode. And then we are going to jump right in. So Ashton is a mom, a wife, an attorney, and a community wellness advocate. She works as a child welfare and adoption lawyer. And when she isn't in the courtroom, she's making the case for clean beauty. That's one of her passions. Ashton's mission of improving her community's overall well-being is a cornerstone of her personal life. Her introduction into wellness and environmental awareness began in 2007 while living in England, where she attended Britain's most sustainable university. There, she became conscious of organic eating and reading ingredient labels as a way of improving her health. After graduating law school in 2011, Ashton's pursuit of a health-conscious lifestyle set her on a clean beauty path that included cleaning up her cosmetics and the products her family used. She also began educating others on the benefit of mindfulness when selecting personal care products and championing cosmetic safety reform by meeting with lawmakers about enacting healthier policies. I mean, we'll just let that sit for a minute.
Important stuff, right? Things to get curious about.
It is. It is. And so I think the bio kind of led in what to expect today. But one thing that I think is really important when we're talking about environmental health and how our environment directly affects our health and well-being is all of the different environmental factors that are just in our daily life and what we directly come into contact with. And a lot of times when we think about the environment, we think about, carbon, and we think about battery operated cars. And while all of that matters, that's a whole different topic. What we're constantly exposing ourselves to and our families to in our everyday lives is something that is within our reach. And it's also something that we, to a certain extent, can control and feel like hopefully after today, our listeners will have some actionable tools to where they feel empowered. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, Ashton. I wanted to start off and just ask you a little bit more about your story with your environment and just how this became something that you were not only curious about, but passionate about.
Absolutely. And so really, I think that when I look back over the past 15 years, God's put me in places that has made me curious and where I've gained wisdom about microenvironments and how little small impacts can improve and have a huge effect on my health. And it really goes back to college. Like you said, I attended a sustainable university in Great Britain. And that's when I started becoming really aware of the organic food movement. And I know that this is something that's started, 10 plus years ago, where we started becoming more conscious of the food we ate and what we were putting into our bodies. And people want to shop organic. And I was working in journalism and did a story about Jamie Oliver, who worked at, for your viewers who don't know, Jamie Oliver is a chef. Yep. And he is a man on a mission. I love a man on a mission. Mm-hmm. He got involved in schools in Great Britain, and he wanted to overhaul their school lunch program. Yep. Because he cared about whole health and foods, and then also the organic aspect to food and what we're spraying our food with and why we need to eat those, because what we put in our body matters. So that was kind of my first entry into being curious about what we're putting in our bodies and reading ingredient labels. Fast forward to going to law school, and you learn a lot about product safety in your classes and some of your litigation classes and consumer laws. And I became a little more refined in what I was using at home, where what I was cleaning with, what I was using on my clothes, just because we were seeing a lot. I had friends personally who were working on class action lawsuits where they were harmed by certain products, right? And I think one of the most famous ones, I'm sure you guys have all heard of, is the talc lawsuits, where people who use baby powders for decades thought it was okay, but in actuality, there was asbestos contamination and people were contracting mesothelioma and, cancer. And so I just got super passionate about this. And also something kind of a fun fact, Erin Brockovich, for your viewers who don't know her, she's a huge environmental lawyer. Julia Roberts played her in a movie.
And she did a fantastic job.
Fantastic job. She did her justice, let me tell you, because I met Erin Brockovich at our Barristers Ball, our last year of law school, and she really ignited that passion in me too about helping your friends and your family. And it starts in your own micro environments in your local community, and having conversations like what we're having to empower people to make better choices for their health. Because one thing that I've learned, and there's a doctor that I follow, he's a holistic doctor, and he's always giving recommendations on things we should do, things we shouldn't, what we need to be aware of, the risks, and he weighs the pros and cons. And he always says, logic is fast and science is slow. And one thing I learned, I'm going to add to that. One thing I've learned is that the law is the slowest of them all. So we have science that exists out there that tells us some of the safety hazards. And I'm not a toxicologist or a chemist, but I know how to read research. And there's some studies done on some of the things we use in our products every day. And there's some products that we use and some chemicals and ingredients that are in products that have no safety studies whatsoever. So you have to be your own advocate. You have to know. And just because it's sold on the shelves doesn't mean that it's safe. And so we can get into that, because there is a lot of fear mongering around what we call clean beauty. And there's a lot of terms that are floated around out there. You might hear clean beauty. You might hear natural beauty or green. There's so many different terms, and they're not defined legally. So it's what a company defines them as. But there's some really great resources that we can talk about that can really help empower your listeners to find out what's clean by their standards. And for me and my family, there are certain chemicals that we want to avoid based on my own health history. So, and this is going to be individual for everyone. So you may have breast cancer that runs in your family. We've all been touched probably by someone that's had breast cancer. If it's not a family member, it's a friend or someone we know. And one of the people that inspire me most in the clean beauty space, her name's Kelsey Bucci. She and I met each other while our husbands were training in the Army together. And she was diagnosed with breast cancer at 30 years old. And so her lifestyle completely changed. And so that was the catalyst for her to for one, pay attention to what she was putting on her body, because our skin is our largest organ. And what we slather on it every day has an impact on our health. And there's different things that we can use that might greatly affect our health more than others. And so that's what we have to pay attention to. And so she started a blog and a clean beauty store. She's based out of Savannah, Georgia, and she follows the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners dirty list of chemicals because there are certain ingredients that are in these products that we use every day. And if you think about the products you use, Kira, you're waking up head to toe. What are we putting on our body, right?
Ashton's looking at my candle over my shoulder.
What are you inhaling?
My toxic candle and my MAC lead lipstick. I'm like,
right?
Yeah.
And so, and one thing that I want to disclaim is this is not an all or nothing approach.
Right.
This shouldn't overwhelm you because number one, cortisol levels, because you're stressed about something, are just as unhealthy as something toxic you're putting on your body or potentially toxic.
Yeah.
I want your viewers and listeners to know that there's a balance to be had, and you can start small because small changes make a big impact. And if I have to give them one piece of advice, if they're new to this, if this is a concept they haven't heard, start with something you use every single day. Mm-hmm. Because one of the main concerns, and if you read the science that exists out there surrounding ingredients and the products that we use and whether they're safe or not, one thing that's lacking is what's called bioaccumulation. So those long-term studies of how chemicals really affect us long-term, because right now the science that's out there, it's really just surveying the acute responses that we have to products.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to die from using something that has a paraben or a phthalate or a PFAS. But as we've seen with recent studies, the PFAS chemicals, which are known as those forever chemicals, those are the ones that stay in your environment. So not just your microenvironment of your body, but they stay in our water when you wash them down the drain and never go away. So there's so many different categories, and we can get into like the 5 different categories of concern for chemicals if you want to. But there are things that we need to be aware of. And this really transfers so well into your life beyond just your home environment or your bathroom environment. Yeah. Because you're going to have conversations about them with your friends and your family. And then they're going to think, okay, well, when I run out of this concealer or this facial moisturizer, I'm going to look for something that maybe doesn't have this chemical of concern.
Right.
So that's kind of my story. I took the leap and really overhauled our family's products. And I started partnering with a company called Beauty Counter. They really were a great resource for me back in 2015 and 16. Before we really started hearing a lot about clean beauty, there weren't that many options. I remember looking and trying to, and being so overwhelmed at Target or wherever I was shopping to try and find things that I thought were clean. I was a breastfeeding mom, and you can pick up lots of bottles that say, do not use while nursing or breastfeeding or while pregnant. And so I got curious about that. Like, why wouldn't I use this? Or what's the risk of harm here? And so it was really difficult. And so Beauty Counter entered the scene. And one of the things that really ignited my lawyer and advocate heart was that we were advocating for more health protective laws, because fun fact, guys, there was nothing regulated about these chemicals that are made to be put on our skin for over 80 years. So we had
the Wild West.
It was the Wild West of personal care products and cosmetics, and truly buyer beware. And so we had about 11 chemicals that were banned in our country. And so if you compare that to other countries, for instance, I lived in Europe, and that's when I became really interested in comparing kind of organic foods to conventional foods. And then I was also doing a different comparison of why are some ingredients banned here, but back home in America, they're not.
So that was going to actually be my first question. And this is, I mean, honestly, some of these are just guys because I'm curious, right? But that was something I wanted to ask you was your love and curiosity for this, right? It started when you were living in England. So then you, after undergrad, you moved back to the States. And so you're on fire for this. Like I remember when you were watching that same documentary, I remember him going in and doing the overhaul on chicken nuggets and having kids make their own in a food processor. And as you were watching that in undergrad, I had finished undergrad and I was watching the documentary Food Matters. And that was what changed everything for me working as a nurse. And that, that was a huge part of me doing an overhaul on what our family ingested with our food. When you were so passionate and had that new just kind of fire inside of you about this topic, and then moved back to the States, and it is so different here. And we're happy to be Americans. This is not us crapping all over our country. However, there's some things that Europe's getting right that we need to catch up on. What was it like coming back and then going, oh my gosh, it's way different here?
It was hard. And I did, I would come home maybe twice a year. And even during those visits, I was starting to have this frustration with, even just at the food level. And we'll take something as awful as McDonald's. Mm-hmm. The fries you eat in McDonald's in Europe aren't made with some of those awful chemicals as they are here. It's cheaper to make. And let's just be honest, it comes down to money. You have to follow the money. I mean, it's a $300 billion industry in just the personal care products. Mm-hmm. So food is a whole other industry. And so it was really frustrating. But once you know better, you do better. And so it really just settled my resolve to be intentional. Mm-hmm. Because that's what wellness meant to me. There was a stirring in my spirit. And like I said, God had placed me in Europe, mm-hmm. where I was at the sustainable university. And sustainable, a lot of people ask and are kind of confused about what sustainable means. Sustainable means what lasting impact. How can we sustain these practices of agriculture or product manufacturing and not destroy our earth, right? So they're looking at ways to impact the health of your environment globally, or, like what you were talking about, you think about carbon footprints. So I was kind of learning a little bit about why that matters and why we need to pay attention to that. And so coming back home, I knew that was something I would never forget. And so I started looking for other ways to gain wisdom on that. And going to law school definitely helped. You learn the law, you learn about the injustices of some of these cases that you would hear about product injury. And we have a great system in the legal system to help make someone whole from that. But it doesn't really help the buyer who's really trying to improve their health every day. And I know your documentary Food Matters was a pivotal one for you. For me, it was an inconvenient truth, because that's what this is. Mm. Not only was I frustrated, I was like, this is such an inconvenience.
Yeah.
I just want to go to the store and find a shelf that it's like, I can use.
Yeah. Well, and also I think one thing that, and this was a reason I wanted to have you on, is like, for example, my husband, this is going to be kind of a comparison to this, or something relatable. When the kids were little, every time the kids were sick, he would be like, well, what is it? I mean, you're a nurse. And I'd be like, I'm not a pediatric neurosurgeon. And I think that's kind of how wellness is. My expertise is functional movement and therapeutic yoga. And then my other expertise is positive psychology and behavioral change in wellness. And what I think something in the wellness space that we have to remember and give ourselves grace in is there's a lot. The same way in Western medicine, there's subspecialties in everything. You've got psychology, you've got dietetics, you've got surgery, you've got women's health, you have endocrine specialists. There's too much out there to be a master of everything. And this is not my specialty. I do not have a background in law. And also, I just don't have the time to be up to date on the research in psychology, behavioral science, functional movement, and then also this. And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, is because it is overwhelming and it is inconvenient. But I also know people want to do well. And when I say well, they want to do well, for themselves and their family. And so where I kind of want to segue is bringing this into the household and practical things, like literally, like I'm getting up at this time. This is my getting ready regimen. This is what we're bathing our kids in. And I kind of want to just go through some areas of the household that are just common areas that everybody has this stuff, and some simple swaps, because we've talked about kind of the big stuff, but I also don't want that to feel daunting and like there's nothing people can do, because it is a big topic and there are a lot of laws, and the United States doesn't do a great job of this, but there are things, guys, that we can do in our house that we can control. I really started paying attention to this, I don't know, however long ago. Me and you've been friends for a while now, but Willow, I guess it's probably been like 3 years ago, Willow, our daughter, she's 10 now, she started wanting to use more of my stuff. And I'm a pretty natural girl anyways. I don't really do a whole lot when it comes to products. It's just not how I like to spend my time. But when she started using my stuff, and when I say stuff, meaning she wants to, use my shampoo, my body wash. She wants to use my lotion. She every once in a while would want to, put on some of my perfume, things like that. Down to my toothpaste, I started going, oh my gosh, my angels, my babies, this is going on them now. The time is now. We have no wiggle room. We are about to do an overhaul. And so that was when I really got serious about it and started paying attention to it, is because our children started to borrow more of our stuff, down to Ori being like, Dad, do you have deodorant I can use? The kids don't need deodorant, but they want to wear it. And so if I were to say, okay, Ashton, some super easy swaps in my bathroom, what would you say are the 5 things in my bathroom that we can wiggle? We can go down or up. The number does not have to be. We're not sticking to the number, guys. But what are some things in my bathroom that you feel like just are easy swaps that I need to be aware of?
Right. So you're right. You're a gatekeeper to your home. It's our duty to protect our kids. And so this is one thing that we can control. This isn't like making an impulsive decision to not eat a donut or a bag of chips that isn't really good for your health. This is something you buy and you use it, and you've made a big impact on your health. And so I always tell people, what's something that's going to stay on your body and you're not washing it off? So first thing that comes to mind is your lotion, right? And that's really where you want to avoid. And take it from me, one of the most complicated and problematic ingredients is fragrance. Okay. Because fragrance isn't just one ingredient. It can be hundreds. Yeah. And there's a law that protects the trademark behind fragrance for companies, because that's where they put their scents and where they put their special top secret ingredients to make their product their own. But that's also where you don't have the information to make an informed decision, because that's where a lot of problematic chemicals are placed, including plasticizers. So if you have something that has fragrance on the back of your ingredient label, especially in lotion or a facial moisturizer that's going to sit on your skin all day, that's something that I would change right away.
Okay. So anything that's going to stay on the skin is a great place to start. And guys, I always like to bring in some kind of Western and Eastern medicine facts here. When I tell you so when I was a nurse, I was a wound care nurse, and all I did all day was work on skin. If you have somebody who cannot take something IV or by mouth, do you know what we do? We will take Ativan, anything, and it's called topical, and we put it on the skin, and we can medicate people by the skin. I can take a topical gel of just about any medication. I can put it on the skin. I'm pointing to the inside of my wrist. That's a good spot for it. And it will be absorbed. So if we can medicate people in clinic in an inpatient setting that way, and it goes into the bloodstream and is activated that quickly, same thing at home. So let me ask you this personal question, not too personal, guys, but as you know, my skin is made to live in the Northern European area. So I have incredibly dry skin in the heat, and especially the winter months here, because we have gas heat, and I just get really dry. So I dry brush regularly. I have been known to take things out of my kitchen and bring it in the bathroom. So I've got, blonde hair. I'll use some cornstarches, dry shampoo. We all know I did a podcast about it. We will use apple cider vinegar as an astringent and to clean things. Yeah. And then also I will sometimes just use I'll use like fractionated coconut oil if we have that in the kitchen as lotion, or even olive oil if that's what we have, because since we ingest it, everything's organic and it's a good quality. What are your thoughts on if I'm like, well, Ashton, there's not a non-fragrance lotion that I love. What about that?
Yeah, so you can use anything that will moisturize your skin. But I think that what makes this hard is that we're used to some luxury. We're used to having things that smell good. And so when you're talking about changing your routine and ritual from, okay, I'm going to go all crunchy and natural, is that sustainable for you and your family? Are you really going to like smelling like olive oil?
For me, y'all know it is. I moved a cow right before this interview. I mean, literally went and got a cow and moved his pen. So for me, it is. However, every time we keep talking about it, I just am picturing probably 60% of us in high school with our Bath and Body Works, and just like, can you even imagine walking into a Bath and Body Works now? I would be on the floor with a migraine from the smells, but I was just walking through life. I mean, I might as well have just gone to Chernobyl and stepped in. I mean,
that was one product. That was one product. So think about, we're not even going to talk about the things you rinse off in the shower, but let's think about any sort of hair product you might use: a facial moisturizer, a sunscreen, a lipstick, a concealer, a foundation, a perfume, a lotion. The list goes on, and you're using these every day. You see how that builds, and what's called a body burden, right? So your body has to process this. And you brought up a really excellent point about how we use topical methods for medication. Mm-hmm. And there's something that your viewers, if they take, and when you asked me, I didn't really fully answer my 5 swaps, because honestly, Kira,
I interrupted you.
Not so much about what product you swap as it is about certain ingredients we really need to be mindful about and avoid. And so some of those are those forever chemicals, anything that has PFAS in it.
And we're going to do some show notes, you guys. You do not have to take notes and remember these chemicals. We're going to do some free resource links for you guys. We're going to equip you with everything you need to follow up on it. So don't feel stressed out about some of the big words we use.
Right. And then there's some chemicals, I'm not even going to throw them out there, but two: parabens, phthalates. Mm-hmm. Those are endocrine disruptors. And so if you think about our ladies that go through menopause when we get older, you can take an oral estrogen supplement, but what's the other way you can have estrogen enter your body?
Yeah.
We have steroid creams. Like these
testosterone creams. We got a cream for everything, you guys. I mean, it's true.
And guess what? Just a fun scientific fact for your nerds out there like me. There has been a recent study that says over 60% of circulating testosterone occurs for males in the skin. So imagine your husbands and your young, vulnerable, prepubescent sons slathering on lotions that have those estrogen mimicking chemicals in their products. There's a reason why we have links to infertility and reproductive issues. So these are things you want to be mindful of, because we are affecting our hormones. And if you're affecting your hormones or your thyroid, you're not going to feel good.
Oof.
So you have to be mindful about those. And so those are the things you want to avoid when you are looking for products for yourself and for your family. Another product that you would be wise to switch up is your deodorant, because
oh my gosh, Ashton Montgomery, ladies, gentlemen, this isn't on. I have tried I've tried most all organic deodorants, and I use them. I do use them. And again, I will say this. I am a put together human being. I mean, I work with clients in person, all that, but I also am I think part of it is because I grew up on a farm and we live on a farm and I'm active. Like it's never expected in our household that, especially after work, that I smell like a fresh flower. Like it just is what it is, y'all. Like I'm an outside girl. And so I have a lot of wiggle room there. However, I have yet to find one that I'm just completely obsessed with. And so I've kind of just gone, you know what? You don't get it all. I also don't want a bunch of heavy metals next to my lymph nodes all day long, next to my breast tissue. And then I like sweating is a great way to detox. The two main forms, guys, of detoxification for the body are through the bowel and bladder and through sweating. That is how you detox. Right there. There really are no other ways unless there's some literature that I'm not aware of. That is how you do it. And so when it comes to deodorant, for the people out there that are like, okay, girl, we get it. It needs to be natural. It stays on our skin. That's number 2. Lotion was number 1. But they're like, none of them work as much as the big toxic lead burden that I could put on. What do you say to that?
So everybody has their own personal journey, and you're going to have to figure out your margin of safety. And so if it's just a absolute hard no, you refuse to sweat or have sweat stains when you're at work. I mean, you may need to do something that makes you feel better, because again, we don't want you stressed, because that's not healthy either. But that being said, you raised a really great point. This is near your lymph nodes, your trash system that filters everything out in your body. And it's not just the aluminum. Again, it's the parabens. Most breast tissue that's cancerous, that's biopsied, has parabens and phthalates found in it. And so you have to kind of just take a trial and error approach to it. If it matters to you and you want to clean that specific product up, just know you're going to change. And look, I'm still 10 years in on this journey, switching up my deodorant because my body changes. My hormones fluctuate. And so one product that worked for me 6 years ago isn't working today. Mm-hmm. And deodorant is that one product that I know I'm not going to use something that is safer, that's going to have the same effect as an antiperspirant that is full of aluminum and all of those synthetic chemicals that we're concerned about. So you have to really just figure out what is going to make you feel at ease and have peace of mind, doesn't stress you out. But maybe a good rule of thumb would be use those really harsh chemicals that you know are chemicals of concern only when necessary. Yeah. Don't use it every day if you don't have to. Right. And I mean, there's things in my makeup bag that if you scan them, and I'm going to give your listeners this resource, scan them, try and do an inventory of how they rate with chemicals of concern, they're going to be in the red. Mm-hmm. I try to keep most of my everyday products that I use on my skin in the green, but sometimes I might want to wear a MAC lipstick, and so I'm going to wear that. But that being said,
Teddy for life.
There are so many amazing options out there. It's not what it was when I first entered this space.
Yeah.
So we have big brands. Even Walmart is carrying some clean products, right? So you don't have to go to Goop and get whatever the most elite clean product is, because let's be honest, that was another thing that was really frustrating. Is it seemed like you had to have a lot of money when I entered this space. Now I was a broke law student, like trying to figure out what can I afford. I'm not going to be able to spend on some of these elite products. And so thankfully we aren't in that environment anymore. There are so many accessible options out there for you. And it's just a matter of taking a little bit of time and swapping it. And guess what? You don't have to do it all at one time. One product. If you get low and you're like, I need to replenish this toothpaste, which one of the main ingredients we're concerned about in toothpaste is triclosan, right? Look for a toothpaste the next time you go shopping that doesn't have that ingredient. Yeah. And so you can kind of work to eliminate that. And it really does clean up your environment, and it makes your space one that promotes your well-being. And we think, does it really have an impact? There was a study done years ago where it tested the urine of teenage girls without having any changes to their lifestyle. It was just based on the products they were using every day as teenage girls. And they had so many different chemicals and hormone levels that were off the charts compared to switching to more natural, safe, less chemical made products for 3 days. It drastically reduced.
3 days.
3 days. 3 days. So imagine those small changes that have a big impact on your health. And so there's a reason to be curious about it. There's a reason to be mindful about it, but you don't have to be overwhelmed. There's something out there, and you can take small steps. Just start with cleaning up something you use every day, and just don't reach for the more toxic product the next time you go to replenish it.
Well, and I think too, just that research alone of 3 days, it's such a testimony of our bodies want to show up for you guys. Our bodies are so forgiving. We can do so much to not support our body. And then just a little bit, for example, 3 days, and it'll really try to bounce back for us. And so it's never too late to make that one tiny shift. It's never too late to take one small step in the direction of wellness. It doesn't, I always tell coaching clients, if you picture your health and wellness journey like a football field, and I know nothing about sports, this is as far as this will go, a football field, the end zone is kind of the like where I want to end up. Right? Like for me, I think of it as like where I want to end up is like a grandma. I kind of think of that as my football field. Like as far as I can see, we're going by yard lines on the football field. There's no strategy in trying to just figure out the end zone in one swoop. You do one step at a time, and then you take your learnings from that. And you go, what worked well? What aligns with my values? What works well with my family? And then you go, okay, what can I take from that and build off of it? But then also, what do I toss to the side that seemed like a good idea that maybe isn't for us? Like the deodorant. Maybe you're like, okay, I'm not giving up my, secret. I don't even know. Like we'll say, I think secret. I have not used real deodorant forever. Yeah. But maybe you say, okay, when I'm doing something like a meeting, or if I'm going to a fancy dinner, I'm going to wear it then, but then I'm going to wash it off when I get home because I don't want to sweat. I've got this great sweater on. It's cashmere. We can't do this today, right? So that's what I mean by learnings. Like it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. There's always somewhere to meet in the middle, I think.
Absolutely. Small steps, progress, not perfection. It's one of my favorite things I've heard, and that really rings true because you won't regret making or investing in your health in this way. You just won't. And one thing too, and this is just me, and I think it's my lawyer mind because I always think, of consequences down the road of things. And I think and I think that's also part of our human nature to want to control situations. But a lot of the stories and the people behind these clean beauty movements who have devoted businesses and blogs and their time to this cause, usually there's been something that's impacted their health in a negative way that's been the catalyst for them making these lifestyle changes. So think about this. If you're already on that journey, and God forbid something happens like that in your life, you're less overwhelmed because you've already started cleaning up your environment. This is something that's not new to you and a completely new lifestyle change. So it is so worth it. And I think that if you look at some of the people that are in the space of clean beauty and who are championing these causes to get more health protective laws enacted, it's not because they're wanting to make money. Yes, there is money to be made. There is a clean beauty space in the industry, and I'm thankful for that because it was once at one time non-existent. But these people care about your health. And so they are truly trying to improve your wellness. And so you don't have to have an all or nothing approach. In fact, I don't even recommend that if you're starting out here. I have found through my conversations with mostly women, I'll be honest, because they are the gatekeepers to the home. They're the ones who do the shopping, and they're the ones who are buying the soaps and the lotions and all the things for their families. I have found that this is the last piece of the health puzzle. I have known personal trainers, I've known nurses and doctors who have cleaned up their diet. They're exercising every day. But then this is kind of that last puzzle piece that they're like, okay, this makes sense for my wellness.
It definitely was for me. I mean, to be honest, and it's been years. And like I mentioned earlier, really the catalyst was me going, oh my gosh, my children are in this space with me, meaning the physical space of like our bathroom and where our stuff is. Okay, I have a question. And like I said, guys, a lot of this is just me asking questions because I don't know. So back to what we're using, Ashton. Makeup, we cannot go through every item, but that's something that stays on our skin, right? And even, I don't remember, I probably started wearing makeup in 7th grade. But think about that's right along the lines of a lot of young women and puberty. So if we're talking about makeup, your foundation, your mascara, your lipsticks, blushes, I don't know how much we're contouring, but what would you say is if you had to pick a couple of pieces of makeup are the most toxic that we need to really pay attention to first? Because we're not cleaning out our whole makeup bag, but what are maybe the first 2 pieces for me to look at in my makeup bag?
So number one, if you wear a foundation, we need to clean that up. Just because that, again, it's like a lotion, right? It is going over the most space on your face, right? And it's sitting there all day. So that has the more likely potential to affect your body, right? So foundation would be the first one that I would check into cleaning up, making a safer swap. The other thing, and you brought this point up about young girls. Well, my daughter, she's gotten into my makeup drawer since she was 2 or 3 years old. She wants to play in mama's makeup. And so I cannot tell you, and there's been lawsuits around this too, about how important it is to have talc-free makeup. If you're using powders, we don't want heavy metal contamination. We don't want that. That is one of the easiest ways that we receive that heavy metal contamination is through that talc, because and lots of companies use talc, but you're looking at the level. So there's a recommended level, and you want to make sure that the companies you're buying from acknowledge that they're not going above that. And so, I think it was Claire's that had a really big lawsuit. Those big makeup eyeshadow,
all the eyeshadow colors,
sparkles, all of it, the whole spectrum. They're awful. They're awful for you. So those are 2 really great ways you can clean up your makeup. If you're using powders, any sort of pressed powder on your eyelids or your cheeks, see if you can find non-talc options, or at least options that are within the safety parameters recommended by the FDA. They don't regulate much, but they do regulate that, right? And then your foundation. So look for that.
Foundation and powders. Okay. And for the listeners, I did an episode. It was early on, but it was, I think it was something titled like My Wellness Things I Can't Live Without at Home. And I do touch on talc and asbestos and the reason it's so messy and gross and the way that they have to mine for it. It's really short and sweet. But if you want to know kind of more of the why with the baby powder and why with the talc, we're so hyper aware of it now, I do touch on it in a previous episode. I'll post it later. Okay. So those are some things that we leave on our skin. I always say in our home, those are the deal breakers. Like that's that's what we focus on first. And then we're trying to be really aware of things that we wash off of our skin, but we focus on the lotions, those things. That's our primary focus. And then we try to be mindful about our body washes and things, but those are things that wash off the skin. So that's not my first priority. That's typically second. And then we have clean toothpaste, anything that goes in our mouths is clean.
There are so many resources online. If you just did a simple search for clean beauty, you're going to see how we have access to resources that are there available for us when it comes to anything that you use. So just take the time.
Just ask your friends too. That's something that, like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, I'm not an expert in everything. Just because I have a couple areas in health and wellness that I'm really, really passionate about and I'm good at, this is not my expertise. And y'all, I will ask Ashton all the time. I will send her pictures of my makeup and say, what's an alternative? So if you have a friend that is just a little bit farther ahead of you, maybe on this journey, ask them what they're using. Okay. For people for a resource, I use this app called the Yuka app. I think that's how you say it. Do you know what I'm talking about? That app?
Tell me about
So
that.
it's an app, and the logo on it is a little carrot. But I use it, and what you can do is you can scan barcodes on products, food, your beauty stuff, your home stuff, and it gives you a rating, kind of what you were talking about. Like poor, good, excellent. And I use it because for sunscreen, basically anything that goes on our bodies. And it is alarming because some of the things that you guys think are clean out there are going to get a real poor rating. And so one thing that I've started doing with the kids, because I have a teenager now, and then Willow also, likes things, is when we go somewhere, I just hand them my phone and I say, well, why don't you find something that you like? If it's, my son wants to pick out his deodorant, I say, well, why don't you get this? But it has to pass the test. And so that's one way I've kind of allowed for them to start to have some freedom and autonomy in these choices, but also a tool. That's something that I've been using. What, if anything, are tools, whether it's an app and again, we're going to link this stuff, guys, but what are you using?
Yes. Well, and first of all, I have to affirm you on equipping your kids, because that's where it starts, right? We didn't do this when we were kids. We were busting the doors of Bath Body Works open.
Oh,
so I can't think of a greater way to invest in your kids' health than by teaching them to be mindful of the food they eat and the products they buy, and giving them a tool and showing them how to do it and doing it together. So I don't use Yucca, but I do use EWG Healthy Living app. And I love that one because it's not just your skincare products. They have cleaning products, they have food, and it's very similar. You can scan it, you can search the database, and it will give you the ratings. There's another app also called Think Dirty, and that is just for cosmetics and personal care items. Okay. And you mentioned something that I think is important. You're right. Some of the stuff that's out there that's labeled clean isn't necessarily clean. In fact,
they're getting bought out. Native did us dirty. They sold out.
They did. And so when you think about the big corporations that are manufacturing these clean products, they also manufacture some of the most toxic products. And so you have to wonder, how are they compromising their safety standards, right? And so that's part of being mindful about it. And here's what you can do. I'm not an expert in all of this. I am a person just like you who's trying to make better choices for my family. I've just been on the journey a little bit longer, and I have a passion for the justice side of it, where I would like to see more people making informed choices and really protecting informed consent. Because look, if you want to buy something that's awful for you and there's science that shows it, that's your right. Let's do it. But I want to be able to make an informed decision, and I want to teach my children how to make an informed decision. So I think that we have to make small steps using those sorts of tools like EWG Healthy Living app and Think Dirty app can definitely assist you. And so when you go into your bathroom, screen it just for fun. Download these apps and just do an inventory and see where products rate. And if you have time, take some time to learn about why this product, because it will show you the ingredients of concern. And, if you, like I said, it's kind of based on your personal health history. If you know that you have a mom that's got, I'm going to give you some personal information, who has thyroid problems, I'm probably going to want to be a little more strict in my criteria when it comes to hormone disruptors and things.
You're going to customize it.
Right. And so this is your tool to empower you and your family. And so I would definitely check those out. Another great resource for learning is safecosmetics.org. And it's the movement and the campaign, and for my science-minded people who want to see the research and how it really adds up.
I do.
I know. And they partner with breast cancer prevention partners. And so you can see all of the studies that are behind why these ingredients are concerning for our health. So those are great learning resources and ways that you can utilize those to make better decisions when you're buying for your family and for yourself. And then some other resources that we can link. There are some really great beauty websites that exist out there. One of my favorite ones is Credo. I love them. They also have some really great educational tools if you want to do a deep dive into ingredients and safety and their standard. And then, like I said, my friend Kelsey Bucci, she has a shop called Paris Laundry, and she has a tightly curated set of products, skincare, makeup, family, that you can choose from. So there's so many different resources out there, but those are some of my favorites. And then I still partner with Beauty Counter. There are items that I love from Beauty Counter that I feel safe about using, and I use them in my beauty ritual day and night.
Yeah.
And I don't have to think about. They're just products I buy, and they were simple swaps, and I know that they're impacting my health. So there's definitely resources out there. Your viewers and listeners are always welcome to reach out to me. I like to talk clean beauty on Instagram, so they're welcome to reach out to me there. And I will send them guides and give them my opinion on anything they have, just like I do with you, because that's how we move and we shake and we make a big impact, is by doing it together, because it is a community effort. Yeah. If we all didn't care about it, we wouldn't see changes. And thankfully, we talked about how the US was behind Europe just a little bit or a lot in regulating some of these toxic chemicals. In 2022, we had some progress with some laws that are on the books about having a little more accountability with our companies and how they manufacture and how they report their safety standards to the FDA. So we're seeing some shifts, but until then, it's up to us.
Yeah, because laws and bills are always passed way a little bit more delayed than when we're seeing issues with things in science and research. So, and she means that, you guys, we're going to link her Instagram and all of her info in the show notes, but she truly is a wealth of knowledge. And even though this was a lot of information, I can't say this enough. Don't feel overwhelmed, because I did not do one big swoop of our household items in one day. I said, oh my gosh, we are no longer going to have baby powder in our house years ago. And we switched over to the Burt's Bees that only has cornstarch in it. And then it was deodorant, and then it was toothpaste, and then it was the lotions. And then after we cleaned up everything that comes into contact with my family, then I went, okay, well, I need to evaluate my beauty products. What am I not willing to get rid of? What am I willing to, maybe try out some new things? And so it gets to be a really slow progression per your comfort level, per your finances, per what you have access to. And you just kind of learn as you go. And remember, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, because best believe on a night out, or if we have a big charity function and we're hosting something, your girl's going to have on some high coverage, probably not clean foundation, but I'm going to wash it off. And then in my daily life, Monday through Friday, we're going to go natural deodorant. We're going to let the hair be a little bit dirty, so we're not washing it constantly and having to do, all the things. You get to pick and choose and tailor it, because Ashton's day is way different than mine. What we do in our beauty regimen and in our wellness regimen is very different. So don't feel overwhelmed. Our biggest takeaway is just to equip you with knowledge, to encourage you, and just give you some things to think about.
Absolutely.
Ashton, what do you want to leave our listeners with as we wrap?
I want you to be encouraged. Like, it's fun. It's fun to try out new products, get your family involved like you do, because you're improving the health of your family. You're not just your own personal health, you're improving the health of your family. And then, like I said earlier, it really translates to your community, through conversations with your friends. And so there are so many reasons to make a switch, whether, no matter how small it is, it's going to have a big impact. So I'm so glad y'all are considering it. If you have questions, always reach out.
All right, you guys. Well, we didn't even get to the kitchen and living room of the house. We only got to talk bathrooms. So we will probably most definitely be doing a part 2 of this one, because there's a lot more that we can cover and tie into this so that we can have all of our bases covered. But today was a great start. And I think it was the most important place to start for the listeners. And also for me, I learned so much that I didn't know about this topic. So as always, you guys, thank you so much for listening. You can rate and review and share. That way other people can find out about the podcast. Definitely share this episode with your loved ones, with your friends. And until the next episode, bye.